Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Iqbal Shoukat, your instructor of managerial economics. In the last lecture, we talked about the general equilibrium, where all economic units got simultaneous equilibrium, or all economic participants they get the simultaneous equilibrium, known as the general equilibrium. Our today's topic is concerned with the consumer and the producer's surplus. Before proceeding to the topic, what would be the learning outcomes from today's lecture? Let's have a look. First of all, from today's lecture, the students will be in a position to explain what is equilibrium, what is the equilibrium price, and equilibrium quantity. Then they'll understand the concept of supply and demand, or by the forces of demand and supply, how the equilibrium is being determined. Then they analyze the effects of demand and supply to the market price and the quantity. Then they'll be in a position to calculate market surplus given supply and demand curves. Then they'll come to know what is the major difference between the price and the market price. Then they'll be in a position to elaborate the concept of equilibrium price and quantity, then what is meant by the consumer surplus, and at the last, they'll be in a position to explain the concept of the producer surplus. Before proceeding the consumer and producer surplus, let's have a look regarding the basic concepts of the equilibrium. If we talk about the equilibrium, what is the equilibrium? Equality of two opposite forces. When two opposite forces become equal to each other, that is known as the equilibrium, or that is the situation when it is attained, it should have the quality to maintain itself. For example, when the height of the people reach at a maximum level, in case of men, the age is 21, whereas in case of a female, the age is 18. After 18, no increase in the height, and regarding to the male, no increase in height at the age of 21. That means when it is attained, it should have the quality to maintain or sustain itself. That is known as the equilibrium, or the equality of two opposite forces. Just like the demand and supply, saving and investment, money demand, money supply, that represent the equilibrium, equality of two opposite forces. That is known as equilibrium. And when we talk about the deadweight laws, the concepts regarding to the equilibrium, deadweight laws, a cost to society created by a market inefficiency occurs when quantity is different from the equilibrium quantity. The quantity can be above the equilibrium point, or the quantity can be below the equilibrium point. What sort of situations will exist? We'll discuss in the next slides. Then, what is the equilibrium price? The price which will be determined by the forces of demand and supply, where the consumers are willing to buy and producers are willing to sell, that is known as the equilibrium price. Or in simple words, we can say that the price level which will be settled by the forces of demand and supply, or by the bargain process in the market, that is known as the equilibrium price. On the same pattern, if we talk about the equilibrium quantity, as the word equilibrium is there, equality of two opposite forces. That means the quantity or the output level which will be determined by the forces of demand and supply, that is known as the equilibrium quantity, or the quantity at which the consumers and the producers they agree to sell in the market, the consumers are willing to buy in the market, that is known as the equilibrium quantity. Or in simple words, we can say that the quantity where consumers as well as the suppliers or the producers they are willing to sell in the market and the consumers are willing to buy in the market, known as the equilibrium quantity. The major question or the main question arises on the part of the consumers, on the part of the students: who settle the equilibrium price, who determines the equilibrium quantity? There is no specific force who will determine the equilibrium price and quantity. There are a lot of number of firms in the market, a lot of number of consumers are there in the market. No individual consumer, no individual firm or the producer can affect the market. It is the mutual directions on the part of consumers and the producers, or when consumers are willing to buy and the sellers are willing to sell, that is known as equilibrium. On the same pattern, there is no hard and fast rule of the determination of the prices. Sometimes supplies goes up, sometimes supplies go down, or on the same pattern, sometimes demands go up and sometimes demand goes down. It means that by the forces of demand and supply, because there exists the perfect accommodation, every firm can enter into the market by their own will, and every consumer can enter into the market by their own choice. There is no restrictions, there are no barriers in the market, there are no concept of any sort of boundaries are there. There is the concept of free entry and exit. Everyone who is willing to buy, he can enter into the market, he can buy the product, and he can leave the market. On the same process, every producer or an individual producer can enter into the market by his own will. He can sell the product and can leave the market. There are no specifications regarding to the settlement of the price. As I told, there are many different firms and consumers. No individual has the power to influence the market prices, but collectively their actions determine it. As I told, by the aggregate effect, by the whole effect, no single, but the community as a whole, the consumers can affect, as a whole, the producers can affect the market price, the market quantity. We can say that this brings us to core conclusion of this topic, this chapter. Market price is determined by the interactions between demand and supply curves. Interaction between the demand and supply, that means the bargain process, where the consumers are willing to buy and the producers are willing to sell in the market. It is through the bargain process. Without the bargaining, no price would be there, no quantity would be there. Here you can see that demand and supply forces. If we talk about the demand, what is the demand? Demand, the desire to get anything, known as the demand. But a desire can't become demand until and unless it satisfies the two conditions. What are these two conditions? Number one is, as I told, willing to buy. That is the first condition. Thought should be there, imagination should be there, willingness on the part of the consumer should be there. That means desire to get. And the second one is power to get. Power regarding to the purchasing power, the income. A consumer should have the income, he should have at least that amount from where he can satisfy his will. That is known as the demand. The desire to get anything from the market, that is known as the demand. But a desire can't become demand until and unless it satisfies the two conditions: desire to get, power to get. If we talk about the supply, supply is always the part of the stock which is being brought in the market for the selling purpose at a specific price at a specific time period. That is known as the supply. Again, I repeat, it is the part of the stock, it is the part of the bulk amount which is being brought in the market from that stock for the selling purpose at a specific time at a specific price. That is known as the supply. Supply and price, they are positively correlated. When the price goes up, the supply will increase, and vice versa. While in case of demand, the demand is negatively or inversely correlated with the price level. As the price goes up, demand goes down. And when the price goes down, the demand goes up. There is the inverse proportionate. As I said, the equilibrium will take place where demand and supply both intersect to each other. So we can say that where the intersection of demand and supply take place, there is the equilibrium situation, equilibrium condition. But this equality does not sustain forever. Sometimes supply becomes more than the demand, and sometimes demand becomes more than the supply. If we talk about the first case regarding to when the price is rupee 5, dollar 5, euro 5, whatever the price you can settle or you can have, here in such situation, supply that is more than the demand. When the supply will be more than the demand, it means a surplus is there. Excess supply is there. There is the more supply, lesser demand. When supply will be more, it means excess supply is there. When the supply would be there, it means products are not selling. Bulk amount of goods are available in the market. For the sale purpose, the producers have to do what they'll do. They have to reduce the price level. They have to decrease the price level. When the price will decrease, the purchasing power of the consumer will increase. So they will increase their demand from this point towards equilibrium. It means when the price goes down, demand goes on to increase. On the same process, on the same pattern, if we talk about the supply, when the price will decrease due to positive correlation with the price and the supply would decrease, because in such situation producers don't get advantage while selling the product in the market, so they reduce the price, they decrease the price. In this way, at one side demand will increase while on the other side the supply will decrease, and again the equilibrium will be restored in the market by the forces of demand and supply. Supply more means unemployment in the economy. Products are not selling in the market. For the sale purpose, the sellers have to reduce the price so that they can sell their product in the market. If you take the second case regarding to demand that is more than the supply, when demand is more than the supply, it means shortage of goods are there. Excess employment is there. People are willing to buy the products, but products are not available in the market. There are no production or supply that is lesser as compared to the demand. More demand means inflation in the market. Whenever the demand becomes more than the supply, it means the shortage is there. To get the lesser commodities, more people are there. The people who will offer the more prices, they'll get the product from the market, so that there is the chance of inflation in the market whenever the demand will be more than the supply. When there will be increasing tendency in the prices, suppliers will get the advantage. They know that their product will be sold at the higher prices, they'll increase the supply in the market, while on the other side, when the price will increase due to inflation or due to the shortage of the product, then the people will decrease their demand with the increase in prices due to negative correlation. Again, the equilibrium will be restored in the market. It means that whenever the demand will be more than the supply, it means lesser goods are in the market, whereas more consumers are there in the market. More consumers, they are willing to buy the lesser goods. What they'll do, the people who will pay the more price, they'll get the product. As it happened in the era of COVID, when there were no markets, shops were closed, then shortage of goods existed, and then the people wanted to buy the same product at the higher prices because there was a shortage of products. Lesser products were in the market and the demand was more. So, when the demand becomes more than the supply, there is the concept of shortage, there is the concept of excess employment, the prices will have the rising or the increasing tendency. For that reason, the supply will go on to increase, whereas the demand will go on to decrease, because the supply has the positive relation with the price, whereas the demand has an inverse proportionate with the price level. In consumer and producer surplus, what conditions or what assumptions should be met? Number one, there is perfect competition both in the commodity and the factor market. Whether the factors of production are there, whether the goods are there, there is the homogeneity of the product, unique price level is there. That means the perfect competition. The consumers, the producers, they'll have to follow the market prices, market conditions, whatever they want to sell in the market. Then the taste and habits of consumers are given and constant. Whatever the preferences the people have shown in the market according to the availability of the product, there shouldn't be any change. That should remain the same. Then income of the consumer and the producers, they are given and they are the constant one. It is the limitations of the income or the constraint of the income, whether the consumer is there or whether the producer is there, both have the constraint of the income. Then the factors of productions are perfectly mobile between different occupations and places. The factors of production, like labor, can move from one place to another place, from one profession to another profession without the hurdles, without any chances of the interference of the people or the public. Regarding to the factors of production, especially the labor and capital, machines and labor can be transferred, can be shifted from one area to another area, from one profession to another profession by their own choice. There aren't any sort of restrictions in shifting the professions. Then the constant returns to scale applies. Whatever the benefit we get from the one unit, the same benefit would be attained by every next unit. That means the constant returns to scale applies. If I'm selling a product at rupee 10, the next unit would be sold at rupee 10, the third one will also be at rupee 10, and so on. It means constant returns to scale apply. Then all forms operate under identical cost conditions. Cost terms, cost conditions, cost values are there which remain constant, which stay constant. There isn't any variation, there isn't any change in the cost of production of the firms, so that there would be no price war, there would be any distribution or distinction regarding to the profit. All units of a productive service are homogeneous. Whatever has been produced in the market, all the units of the product, they are homogeneous, they are the similar. So if the difference would be there, then the price variation will exist. Homogeneity is the main condition, is the main assumption of the perfect competition, so that product homogeneity should be there. Then no change in the techniques of production. Whether you are producing the goods by labor intensive techniques or by with the help of capital intensive techniques. If we talk about the labor intensive, when more labors are being applied with less capital to produce a specific level of output, that is known as the labor intensive technology. Or when we produce the same level of output with more capital with less labor, that is known as the capital intensive technique. Whatever the technique of production is being followed on the part of the producers, that will remain same throughout the production process. The last one is there is full employment of labor and other resources. Full employment, whatever has been produced in the market, that is going to be sold out. Nothing remains unsold, nobody remains unsatisfied. Whoever is coming in the market for the job purpose, he is getting the job according to his potential, according to his capabilities, and so on. That means the full employment. Now we'll proceed regarding to the market surplus. If we talk about the market surplus, which consists of both consumer surplus as well as the producer surplus. If we talk about the consumer surplus, what the price the people are willing to pay and what they actually pay, that is known as the consumer surplus. And if we talk about the producer, what the price they are willing to charge and what they actually charge, that is known as the producer surplus. So if we talk about the market surplus, all those prices which will be charged above and below the equilibrium price, they'll be considered as the market surplus. Market is the combination of both consumer as well as the producer. So we can say that the combination of consumer and producer surplus known as the market surplus. Then, oftentimes it happens. Okay, what would happen in the market? What sort of calculations we have to made in the market, whether the market surplus exists there or the private surplus exists there, whatever the benefits we are receiving, whatever the benefit the people are receiving, whatever the advantages the producers are receiving by selling their products or by hiding the products from the market. If we talk about the consumer surplus as well as the producer surplus, whoever would be there, whether from the government sector, from the private sector, the main objective is to get the benefit, get the return that can be in the form of consumer surplus or the producer surplus. Their prices would be lower, whereas the benefit would be more. If we talk about the market surplus, as you can see that the area below the demand curve and above the supply curve represent the surplus, whereas the demand and supply equality represent the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. Here the blue area that represent the market surplus at equilibrium prices, and this triangle below the red line and in between the black, this triangle will represent the opportunity cost. That is known as the best alternative foregone. Okay, where you want to get the advantage, you will go for that product rather than the same or the previous product. Now, what is the consumer surplus? Consumer surplus, what the price the consumers are willing to pay and what they actually pay, that is known as the consumer surplus. Very simple example. For example, the consumers they are willing to pay to buy this cell phone that is rupee 50,000, let's suppose. And in the market, by the forces of demand and supply, the same cell phone is available at rupee 20,000. It means they were willing to pay rupee 50,000, but in the market, by the forces of demand and supply, the market price is rupee 20,000. It means that they are saving 30,000 in the form of consumer surplus. They were willing to pay 50, but actually they are paying the 20,000. The difference between actual and what they pay, that is known as the consumer surplus. What assumptions should be kept in mind regarding to consumer surplus? First one is the marginal utility of money, that should be the constant. There shouldn't be any variations regarding to the marginal utility. Whatever we are getting the benefit from one unit of money, the next unit will provide the same benefit, the same return, the same advantage, the same satisfaction. It has been assumed that there is no close substitute. No close substitute, as we discussed in the previous assumptions, whatever has been produced in the economy, that is at the fixed amount. No closed forms are there, no closed substitutes are there. So whatever has been produced, we have to depend upon the same production level. Utility is a measurable phenomena. The concept of consumer surplus and the producer surplus was defined by the Alfred Marshall. Alfred Marshall says that it is the cardinal concept. Utility is the cardinal concept. The cardinal numbers, the natural numbers 1 to 3, they are known as the cardinal numbers. Marshall says that utility is a measurable phenomena. We can measure the utility into numbers. So, utility is a measurable phenomena that can be measured into numbers according to the classical approach, according to the Alfred Marshall, according to the cardinal approach. Then the taste and incomes are same. It has been assumed if one person is having rupee 10,000, the other person is also having rupee 10,000. Whereas the taste and the habits of the people, they are also the same. There shouldn't be any variations. There shouldn't be any change. Then market conditions remain the same. The market conditions whether there is perfect competition, whether there is monopolistic competition, whatever the conditions are existing in the market, there shouldn't be variations in that. If we talk about the market conditions, in such situation, it has been considered that there exists the perfect competition, so that market condition will stay on perfect competition, where all the units that has been produced in the market, the same price is being charged from the available units. Here you'll see the consumer surplus, the difference between the price, what the consumers were willing to pay and what they actually paid, known as the consumer surplus. Here you can see the area above the equilibrium price. At this level, the consumers were willing to pay. When the price goes on to fall, the consumer surplus of the people that will decrease. With that increase in price level, the consumer surplus of the people will increase if the equilibrium price stay constant or stay stagnant. Otherwise, the consumer surplus can't be attained or can't be maintained. In simple words, we can say that consumer surplus is the difference between the price that the consumers are willing to pay and the price they are willing to pay and what they actually pay. That is known as the consumer surplus. Whatever the benefit, that is known as the benefit, they are paying in the market, that is the price, but actually they are willing to pay at these levels. So whatever they are saving in the form of the price, that is known as the consumer surplus. They are willing to pay higher prices, but actually they pay the lesser price. The difference between the upper and lower price level, that is known as the consumer surplus. While on the other side, if we talk about the criticism regarding to the concept of consumer surplus, number one, this concept is imaginary. In normal routine, it does not happen. It doesn't exist. What people are willing to buy, what they are willing to pay, they are ready to pay. They have to pay whatever they want to buy. It doesn't mean that okay, they are willing to pay more, but they are paying less. It isn't in the practical life. It isn't the true one. The measurement of this concept is the difficult. It isn't easy task because demand and the price of the products are not available. They are not in the list form. You can't imagine or you can't calculate the consumer surplus from one product from the other product. There are the multiple products, multiple items are there, but it is difficult to calculate. The concept is not applicable to the substitutes. Here it has been assumed that there is no close substitute. No substitutes are available in the market. But if you are living in a market, substitutes would be there. Competition is there. If you are talking about the competition, so then we can say that the concept of substitute that would be violated. Substitutes would be there. They'll be charging lesser prices as compared to the available prices, or they have to compete the market, they have to follow the market prices because perfect competition is there, so that there is no concept of the lesser or the more prices. Whatever is being brought in the market, that is going to be sold out. Substitutes are available, substitutes are there, or you can shift your consumption from one side to the other side. Next one, the marginal utility of money never remains constant. It is the general phenomena. Whatever you have attained, whatever you have utilized, if you're spending your money on the same product, you can't get the same benefit or the same return from the same product. So that the marginal utility of money, they will never be same, they'll be never constant for the rest of the money units. Exhaustion of surplus utility. If you are getting the benefit, we are having the excess money, excess availability of cash, then that surplus can't be exhausted, that can't be transferred to the other terms, to the other factors, to the other items. Then the concept is not applicable to necessities of life. If we talk about the necessities of life, basic needs, whether the price goes up or that goes down, we are bound to pay the money, we are bound to buy that, because without these commodities, these products, we can't survive or we can't cover ourselves. Then a complete list of demand and price not available to the consumer. As I told in the previous assumptions, a complete list of demand and supply, or the complete list of demand and their prices, they are not available to the consumer. They can't judge okay, where we can get the benefit or where we can't get the benefit. It's difficult for them to observe, to analyze the concept. Then, what is the practical importance of consumer surplus? First one is distinction between value in use and value in exchange. You can easily discriminate whatever the money you are having with yourself and whatever you have spent on goods and services, the remaining amount where you want to spend, you can do that. Then you can easily compare the gains from the international trade, whether we are getting the products from domestic market or from the international market, whatever the benefit, whatever the result, whatever the tools we will receive, we will gain, we can easily compare. Even it is useful to businessmen as well as the monopolist. We can understand from where we can get the benefit, we will switch our money towards that market. Then comparing advantages of different prices regarding to the consumer surplus, we have to compare the prices of different products, from where we are getting the more advantage and from where we are getting the lesser advantage, we can calculate that. Then it is very important, it is in public finance. In public finance, we can easily calculate the importance of the money which is being left with us and how we can spend that and what sort of benefit, what sort of return we can have from that. The last one is importance in welfare economics. Well being, welfare economics, betterment, better opportunity, because whenever there will be the consumer surplus, they are increasing the welfare of the community, they are increasing the welfare of the consumers, customers. That means this concept is closely relevant with the increase in the welfare economics. Next is the producer surplus, the people who are converting the goods and services or the factory inputs into final products, they are known as the producer. Or those people who combine the factor productions like land, labor, capital, and organization, and by the utilization of these factors of productions, whatever the result, whatever the products they are providing in the market, they are known as the producers. Or if you talk about the producer surplus regarding to the consumer, it is the opposite of the consumer surplus. What the price the producers are willing to get from the consumer and what they actually receive, what they are willing to receive and what they actually receive, that is known as the producer surplus. Or producer surplus, that is the measure of producer welfare. It is measured as the difference between what producers are willing and able to supply a good for and the price they actually receive. So we can say the difference between the price what a producer is willing to receive and what they actually receive, known as the producer surplus. Just like the consumer surplus, there are the assumptions of producer surplus. One is the marginal rate of technical substitution of money is constant. Marginal rate of technical substitution, that means how many units of capital we have to drop to get an additional unit of labor. If we are dropping 5 units of capital to get an additional unit of labor, for every next unit of labor we have to drop the 5 units of capital. That means the marginal rate of technical substitution of money, that is the constant. No close substitutes available of the factors of production. If you are if you are implying the labor can be in different forms. That can be regarding to the mental services, that can be regarding to the physical services. Whatever the capabilities, whatever the capacities they are having, no other one having the same capacity, same qualities. Utility can be measured, or production is a measurable phenomena. The satisfaction, the productivity, that is the measurable phenomena. We can count that how many units have been produced in the market. Then techniques of production and cost productions are the same. There shouldn't be any variation. There shouldn't be any change regarding to the cost of production. Cost and techniques of production regarding labor intensive and capital intensive remains the same. Then the market conditions remain the same again regarding to the perfectly competitive market. If perfect competition is existing in the market, we have to stick on that. We'll assume that there would be no change regarding to perfectly competitive market. Here you'll see the difference of the price what a producer is willing to receive and what he actually receives. The area below the equilibrium price, that is known as the producer surplus. Producer is willing to receive $2, but actually he is receiving $5. There are $3 he is receiving extra for the same product due to the equilibrium in market or equilibrium forces. So that the price what a producer is willing to charge and what he actually receives, that is known as the producer surplus. The difference between that, the difference between the price what a producer charge and what he is willing to charge, that is known as the producer surplus. On the same process, we are going to criticize on the producer surplus. Just like the consumer surplus, it is also the imaginary concept. In practical life, no consumer would be willing to sell less than their production cost, less than their marginal cost, until and unless they are not meeting their marginal cost, their cost of production, they will not be in a position to supply the product. So that it is the imaginary and the vague concept which is not practical in real life. Measurement in this concept is difficult. It is very, very difficult which products the producers are willing to sell in the market, whether there is excess supply in the market or at the shortage period. It is difficult to imagine which products they would wish to sell in the market if they are not meeting their cost of production. This concept is not applicable to the substitutes. As I told in the consumer surplus, there is the perfect competition. In both the markets, there is the perfect competition. If the perfect competition would be there, substitute would be there. So the condition of no substitute, that would be violated. That is not in practice. That will not be practical. So that we will negate the concept of no concept of the substitutes. Then the marginal rate of technical substitution of money never remains constant. It is very common in general concept. Whatever you have attained, whatever you have implied in the form of labor and capital, whatever the money you are going to spend on labor and capital, the return wouldn't be the same. Then exhaustion of surplus production, where you keep your production, where you'll have your production in the form of bulk quantity. You need the warehouses, you need the storehouses. You don't have much money to save that production. Then this concept is not applicable to the necessities of life. Necessities of life, if they are concerned, if the producers are producing, if they are producing the wheat, the rice, the barley, and the different grains, whatever they have produced in the market, whatever the price, whatever the cost they have faced, they'll never sell their products below these prices. So in this situation, the concept of producer surplus, that becomes inapplicable. Then the last one is a complete list of supply and price available to the producer. Whatever they are producing, whatever they are making in the economy, whatever they are having with them, that can't be provided. The list of supply and their prices is not available for every producer in the market. That's all from my side for today's lecture. Inshallah, in next lecture we'll talk about the stabilization policies, that can be how an economy can be stabilized by using the monetary and the fiscal policies. Inshallah, in the next lecture, we'll talk about the monetary and the fiscal policies and their implications, their applications, their criticism. So it is guided to the students, directed to the students. Kindly go through the lecture number 27, lecture number 28, so that it would be easy for you to understand the concepts of stabilization policies regarding to monetary and the fiscal policies. Until then, take care. Allah Hafiz. God bless you.